And right here, I came up and I'm at exactly 100,000 kilometers. That's pretty cool. Well, welcome back to the channel. We're jumping right in because this is part 2 of the Duffy Lake Loop. And I'm just outside of Lillooet, just past Seton Lake, heading westwards towards Pemberton and Whistler. So part 1, I started from Abbotsford and went to Hope, Hell's Gate, saw the burned out Lytton, and went to Lillooet. And for a link, it should be visible now. You can click on that. I find this stretch of road very easy to ride. There's no tight twisties, everything kind of flows nicely, and the road's in fairly good condition, which can't be said for the entire route, and you do have to be careful. But yeah, it's a pretty decent road here, and you can just sort of flow and go at your own pace. You don't have to be worried about anything, and you can just enjoy the ride. It's really nice. The scenery out here is fantastic too. So many tall trees, the smell of the pine and Douglas fir, and here we are, we're now going to be paralleling along Cayoosh Creek. And yeah, well, there's a little road construction, so just shows you. Cayoosh Creek is often not that big. It's a little bit heavier today. There's been a lot of snow melt, I suppose, and yeah, it's flowing pretty nicely. The further west I traveled, the closer the road got to the creek, and also the more ferocious looking the creek became. It was an interesting dynamic, made more interesting because now the guardrail was gone, and look how close the creek is here to the road. Like I say, it's a little bit busier than the creek normally is as I ride this area, so it gave me something to think about considering the flooding that I was already talking about in episode part 1. In 2021 there was a lot of flooding from heavy rain, and I could easily see this road being overrun by the water. So I mean, look how ferocious the water is here in this section, and it's not that far from the road. So here's an interesting spot too. Nice waterfall. Beautiful. And here we are finally at Duffy Lake itself. Duffy Lake is enclosed within the Duffy Lake Provincial Park. It also includes a large stretch that we've just traveled along, the Cayoosh Creek. And Duffy Lake has hiking trails, but a lot of camping opportunities as well. It's also got a boat launch at one side of the lake, which is a good stopping spot for a bite to eat as well. From Duffy Lake, it's basically a climb up into the mountains. We're near Mount Mattier, and then we drop down again as we approach Lake Lillooet. Make sure you gas up at Lillooet, by the way, because there's nothing along this entire stretch. No gas stations, no towns, just some camping spots. That's about it. It's this area, before we hit Lake Lillooet, that we have the most technical section of the Duffy Lake Loop. Unfortunately, this is also where the road is perhaps its worst, and maybe that makes sense because we're higher up in the mountains and there's a lot of snow here, and that causes a lot of damage to the road, and trying to keep the road clear also creates a lot of damage. So you really need to be careful that you know what the road condition is before you go into a turn. You do not want to get surprised out here. So leaving a mountainous area, of course, we're heading downhill as we hit these corners, and I find that always makes it a little bit more interesting. We've got several pullouts here for trucks as well, since their brakes can't necessarily handle the steepness of this road. Lots of switchbacks like this one here. It's fun trying to set your line properly and really go about it smoothly. Before we know it, we get to Lillooet Lake and a return to civilization of sorts. But Duffy Lake Road is a fantastic motorcycle road. definitely one of the top roads in British Columbia. And British Columbia is a land of great motorcycle roads. So that's really saying something. If you're in the area, this is one you will definitely want to do. Next up is the small village of Pemberton. About 3,500 people live here. Full services, gas, restaurants, that kind of thing. Just out is 1 Mile Lake. You can see the cars parking here on the side. It's a pleasant place to stop for a picnic. And also just ahead is the Nairn Falls Provincial Park. I usually stop here for camping. It's got camping. You can hike out to the falls, which is not very far. It's a nice pleasant hike. And its parking lot is just here to the left. Now, on to Whistler. Green Lake, shown here on my left, is the largest lake in the Whistler Blackcomb area, but also the coldest. It doesn't really warm up the same way some of the smaller lakes do in the summer, so it's not so good for swimming, at least in my opinion. So Whistler Blackcomb, here's one of the entranceways here. There's a few entranceways off the highway. Is perhaps the biggest ski resort in all of North America. It gets over 2 million visitors every year. It has the highest lift capacity to take people up to the top of the mountain. Here it is here. It's 2 mountains in one. And it also has a gondola that'll take you across peak to peak from one mountaintop to the other mountaintop, traveling about 3 kilometers or 1.9 miles. Awesome. Friday traffic from Vancouver can back up as you approach Whistler, but for most of the road, they widened it in 2010 for the Olympics, so it's not too bad for driving. And this is an exciting road. It's known as the Sea to Sky Highway, and it's got a lot of great curves. Directly ahead of me, you can see some snow-capped mountain peaks. There's a lot of peaks out here that stay covered in snow throughout the summer. It's one of these roads that's just carved out of the side of the mountainside, like so many mountain roads, I suppose. When we arrive at Squamish, at the top of Howe Sound, we're greeted to a sight of the Stawamus Chief, a granite dome towering over the town. It's 700 meters tall, which is about 2,300 feet. It's one of the largest granite monoliths in the world, so naturally, Squamish is the rock climbing capital of Canada, and it attracts a lot of attention internationally. People come from all over to try to climb the Chief, especially the sheer face wall. Must be quite something to do. But there's also hiking trails that will take you around from the backside and bring you right to the top. And there's absolutely spectacular views from there. There's quite a nice waterfall here on the left. And you can see a lot of hikers and bikers are out at the Chief today, judging from the parking lot. And why not? And here at Britannia Beach, there's the Britannia Copper Mine Museum. That's that large building straight ahead. Back in the 1920s and 1930s, that was the biggest copper mine in the British Commonwealth. So I've been to that, and I've also been to Morenci, which is the US biggest copper mine today. And with that, I'm nearly at Vancouver. Thanks so much for spending time with me. Please like and subscribe, and have a great day. Bye for now.